Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. This video is a long time coming. I know a lot of people actually have been asking for this video, and that is how to play World Eaters Codex World Eaters. Just a brief introduction. I've made a video on my channel titled How to Play World Eaters, and that was made during Index World Eaters. Now we have a codex for the World Eaters, and what that essentially means is that the rules have changed. A lot of the different abilities in this army has changed. A lot of the different units have gotten worse or gotten better, and so it's almost a completely new army at this point. And it's worth talking about, and kind of if you're new to Warhammer 40,000 and you're interested in World Eaters, this is the video for you. Because I'm going to be running down the different units and how to play them. Not all of them, obviously, but the units that I think are worth taking in this army. So yeah, it's going to be a great video. Hope you guys enjoy it. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment down below what you think of Codex World Eaters. Let's start off by introducing the different, the army rule, first of all. And then we'll introduce the different detachments. We're mainly going to be focusing on the main detachment, the most widely used detachment, which is Berserker Warband. There are some decent other detachments, but I think for the sake of a shorter video, we're just going to focus on Berserker Warband, and then we're going to talk about the different units that are the different staple units. Jeez, just looking for that word is kind of rough. Sorry guys, it's late and I'm tired, but here we are. We're going to talk about a lot of the staple units that I think a lot of people are bringing to the table competitively and also casually. So let's get started. Our army rule is still the same as Index, but it works in a slightly different way now, I think. It's Blessings of Khorne. So essentially at the start of each battle round, not turn, battle round, you roll 8 dice. And out of those 8 dice, you take the results and you're able to pick 2 blessings. Those range from reroll to charge, which is not as widely used as the second one, which is 6-inch pylon and consolidate, which is probably the best blessing out of all of them. If you haven't tried it and if it doesn't seem that good, you don't know how to play it. So learn to use that 6-inch pylon and consolidate because it's really, really good. You also have sustained hits, and then you have lethal hits. You have devastating against infantry, devastating wounds against infantry, also very, very good. And then the last one is going to be fight on death 4+. Every single one of those blessings are really, really good, except maybe reroll to charge. I would say I almost never use that. I think if you're using reroll to charge, then you must be planning to have like 2 to 3, 7-inch charges or something like that, or 8-inch charges. In which case you're probably not in a good position. But yeah, there you go. That's the army rule. We're going to move on to some of the different detachments. I'll go through them briefly. The first one, which everybody uses, is Berserker Warband. It's a very simple army rule. If your unit makes a successful charge move, you get +1 strength, +1 attack, and +2 strength. Really, really strong, because it makes your units hit very, very hard. It makes your berserkers hit hard into most things, and it makes them absolutely really, really powerful. They're not quite as powerful in a lot of the other detachments just because they don't have this rule, right? Because they're strength 4 and they don't hit very hard. But Berserker Warband, very, very good. We can go down the list here. I think there's Gortrak. I forget the name of the detachment, but it's Gortrak. Essentially, that's a detachment that's specialized in using vehicles like rhinos, and also a lot of the other vehicles like Forge Fiends, Mauler Fiends, and Hellbrutes. They gain things like going through walls with 1 CP using a stratagem. There's a lot of really neat tricks that you can do with the Rhino and the Berserkers and Master of Executions. Just a really, really fun detachment. I don't think it's quite as deadly as Berserker Warband, or at least you have to set things up in such a way for you to be able to be deadly, whereas Berserker Warband is just straight up charge and kill. So Gore Track is a fun one. I've only used it ever once, and I did win that game, but it was really, really tough because it's a lot more tricky to use, I would say, than Berserker Warband. But I haven't had enough experience in that to really comment on it. Next we have the 8-bound detachment, which is, I think, it's called Slaughter Band something. But essentially it's a detachment focused on 8-bound. You're going to be spamming a lot of 8-bound, probably between 6 and 9 8-bound, 6 and 9 exalted 8-bound, and then you're just going to be, that probably is the most killy detachment. Your 8-bound is just going to kill everything in the game, but setting up to kill those things and while scoring VP is a little tough. So that's kind of the how that detachment really works is you basically have a lot of 8-bound, but not a lot of scoring units, and so it really depends how you set up your list. But I haven't used that one before, but I can see from how well people do that it's not very easy to use. Then you have Cult of Blood. That's a really fun one I'm looking to try. I just don't have 70 jackals to use. I could always borrow, but that's essentially a detachment using things like Lord of Skulls, Demon Princes. They give auras to your jackals to make them more durable, stronger, and essentially you have these big idols, Cult of Blood, and then these idols give like 9 or 6-inch auras that benefit your jackals and your goremongers. Pretty fun looking detachment, but I think it suffers from a lot of the problems of the other detachments, which is that it's not Berserker Warband. Berserker Warband just has everything you need to win, whereas a lot of these other detachments has like one thing, it does one thing really well to help you win, but then not the other things. So I would recommend, if you're just starting World Eaters, to play Berserker Warband first. What's also unfortunate about these detachments is that a lot of these detachments specialize in a particular unit. Like, for example, the Slaughter Band detachment focuses on 8-bound, so you're going to be using a lot of 8-bound, whereas if you're using a Berserker Warband list, you're not going to be taking as many 8-bound. So if you're just starting out, I recommend having a balance of units and not focusing on these other like sub-detachments, I would say. And then we also have a Demonkin detachment, which is cool, really, really cool, but once again, you have to buy a lot of demons that you cannot use in the other detachments, even as allies, which is very unfortunate. The new battle force has been announced for the Demonkin detachment, and you essentially get almost all of the demons that you need to run that detachment, but really it's kind of weird because you can't use it in any other detachment. I suppose you can also use the demons to play demons, which is fine, but we're talking about World Eaters right now. So Demonkin is very, very fun. There's a lot of shenanigans that you can use to kind of pair your demons with your World Eaters units, and they benefit each other. And there's even a way for your demons to actually get Blessings of Corn, which is the World Eaters army rule. A lot of really fun stuff to use. It used to be really overpowered when you could just drop bloodletters in 3 inches away from your enemy, or it doesn't even have to be 3 inches. I think it's just like you can drop it anywhere within 9 inches of your unit. Something crazy like that, but now I think it's been nerfed to like 6 inches away from enemy units, which is still good, but it's not quite as good as before. And then you also have Vessels of Wrath. I'm not going to talk too much about that, partially because I completely forgot what it does. but that was the Grotnos detachment from last year. I think it was 2 years ago, something like that. But it's been a while. That detachment's been out for a while. Again, not quite as good as Berserker Warband. I think that's about it for the detachments. Let's talk about the units. So again, we're going to talk about this in the context of Berserker Warband. So I'm assuming you guys are going to be using Berserker Warband in this video. We're going to talk about, this is a mess of units that I have here. We're going to kind of go down the list. Starting off with Angron. Angron currently is in a kind of a cool position where he is 340 points. He is essentially just a beat stick. He doesn't do much else other than kill, right? And he's not like, also not a unit that like is, he's great at killing, but he doesn't always do his job. And what I mean is, he flies 14 inches, and that's really, really far. That's a really big threat range. He is T11, toughness 11, he has 16 wounds. So really, really tough, not easy to kill, and also a really big threat range. The thing is, he doesn't have advance in charge, right? Whereas in Index, you could potentially advance in charge with the blessings. So now his threat range is very predictable, right? And what that essentially means is that your opponent, if he's a good opponent, skilled player, is not going to be placing anything of worth within Angron's range, right? Probably not, right? If he does, then he's looking to trade, right? He's looking for you to push your Angron to the front, kill the thing that he wants you to kill, and the next turn he's just going to blast Angron off the board with everything else. So Angron's not quite as easy to use as he was before, because he used to be so unpredictable with advance in charge. He no longer has that, so he's very predictable. Threat range is really measurable. It just depends on where you deploy him, and your opponent's just going to play around it, right? So he's still a great unit to bring. He does have Deep Strike. You could put him in Deep Strike and kind of scare your opponent and make him think about where Angron's going to go in Rapid Ingress. But every other mechanic that made him so deadly in Index is kind of nerfed to hell, right? It's nothing now. For example, he has a revive mechanic. So if he dies, you roll your Blessings of Corn next round, and if you roll 3 6s, he lives, right? That mechanic still exists, but now, here we go, this is the really sad part. Angron revives only on 8 wounds, and also if you revive him, he goes into reserve, and you lose all of your Blessings of Corn for that turn. So you can't get any Blessings of Corn, you can only bring him back, and he comes into reserve. And he can only come down during your turn, right? And I don't remember if he can charge or not, but he can only come down during your turn, so he has to make a 9-inch charge if he wants to make a charge. Essentially, you can't Rapid Ingress him, because if you end your turn without dropping Angron, he dies. He's no longer in your reserve, he's gone. So you can't Rapid Ingress him, you have to drop him somewhere 9 inches away from enemy units, and it's just not what it used to be, because it used to be that you can drop him into Deep Strike and you can Rapid Ingress him during your opponent's next turn, right? Or during your opponent's turn. And that's super deadly. He also loses his incredible aura, which one of his auras in Index, which was reroll to hit. Anything within 6 inches, it doesn't have to be wholly within. Anything within 6 inches rerolls to hit. So your Berserkers, your 8-bound, everything within your 6-inch range becomes a monster, right? Because rerolls to hit, if you give it sustain hits, you give it lethal hits, it's just gonna kill everything, right? Even your Jackals are gonna kill so many things, right? It might kill a Rhino even, which is insane, but that's no longer the case. He just has these 3 crappy auras. They're useful, but they're not nearly as good as before. One of his auras involve you being able to reroll 6 dice in your Blessings of Corn, which is the one that you're going to be using a lot. You also get these 2 other ones that are pretty useful against something like Death Guard. So it has an aura. One of his auras is that anything within 6 inches cannot have a modified hit roll, right? So your opponent can't -1 to hit you, which is really useful, right? Against Death Guard, against Sanguinary Guard, Blood Angels, and then anything that -1 to hit, you will want to use that aura. So that's kind of neat, but it's very niche. And then the other one is the least used one, but it's decent. It's good against Tal. What it does essentially is that if your opponent is within 6 inches of Angron and wants to fall back, he has to take a leadership test, and if he fails, he cannot fall back, right? That used to be an aura for the Exalted A-Bound, and now it's an Angron aura, which is so weird. But that's okay. I usually use Angron as just a big, fast beat stick. Kills 1 or 2 things, and then your opponent is going to try to kill him. Sometimes fails, sometimes succeeds. Either way, you get his points worth, and that's the end. That's it. I don't revive him, almost never revive him, and that's it. So you have Angron. He is in my list. He is still a good beat stick. He still kills things really well. But yeah, they also dropped him down from AP4 to AP3. So if you're hitting anything with Armor of Contempt, you're hitting a Land Raider, you may not kill it, right? If you roll a lot of 1s in your hit roll, you may not kill it. I'm just saying. Be reasonable with Angron. Don't get your expectations too high. He is not nearly what he was before. That was a lot of talk for just Angron. We're going to move faster now down the list. So this is a character that I've used in every single list since the Codex was released. Every single list, especially Berserker Warband. Karn the Betrayer. He is the best, one of the best, he's definitely the best character in the Codex, one of the best units in the Codex. So he's always going to be leading Berserkers. You can choose to have him lead a squad of 10 or a squad of 20 Berserkers, and he essentially makes that Berserker squad so much more deadly than if he wasn't there, right? He gives that squad rerolls 1 to hit, reroll wounds of 1 as well. That is absolutely insane with the sheer volume of attacks that a Berserker squad can push out. And he's just absolutely essential. You put him with a Berserker squad and always in a Rhino. That's what I always do anyway. I've never put him in a 20-man just because 20-mans are easy, they're easy to shoot. So your opponent's just going to get shots into your 20-man, and then of course you're going to say, oh, but you can Blood Surge, but not really, right? We'll move on to the Berserkers next, I guess, because that's what we're already talking about. Berserkers are very good in this detachment, but so Berserkers can Blood Surge, right? Which is really good. They also slightly buffed it. You're now moving D6 plus 2, and you have a stratagem to essentially move automatically 8 inches. Blood Surge. But Blood Surge isn't what most people think it is, right? Most people think Blood Surge, your opponent's just gonna, they shoot you, you're gonna kill a couple of Berserkers, and you're just gonna Blood Surge into a unit that your opponent is not expecting to, and you're gonna kill it, right? But in reality, that's not what happens. Blood Surge is simply good because your opponent is gonna distance himself from your Berserkers 9 inches, right? So if you put your Berserkers in their front lines, they're going to have to move back 9 inches. And that's good because now they can't score their primary and their secondary, and they're kind of stalled for a turn. That's essentially what it does, in my opinion. Also, if you're looking to gotcha your opponent with Blood Surge, then you're not playing Warhammer correctly. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to tell your opponent what Blood Surge does in the beginning of the battle. And if they still don't understand the mechanic, please remind them during the game. This is how Blood Surge works. I'm going to Blood Surge to your nearest unit. So yeah. So one of 2 things is going to happen with Blood Surge is essentially your Berserkers are going to move into combat or into engagement with a unit that your opponent is already planning for you to hit anyway. So that unit might have fights first. That unit might be a trash unit that your opponent doesn't care about. Or all of your opponent's units are just going to be 9 inches away, and you can't reach any of them, right? So yeah, that's Berserkers. Really, really strong, especially with Karn. They're just super deadly. Next character we'll talk about, which usually leads Berserkers as well, is Master of Executions. Master of Executions is pretty good if you need a leader for your Berserkers. He is, as with Index, he's reroll to hit against reroll to hit and reroll to wound against character. He's pretty deadly, especially if you put the glaive on him, the glaive enhancement, which is +1 attack and +1 damage, right? So pretty strong, but he loses the fights first. He used to have fights first in Index, which is really, really strong. Now he loses that. We don't really have fights first in this codex, other than very niche detachment and enhancements and whatever. So MOE pretty good, but there is one other character leader that I prefer to rather than MOE. MOE also Master of Executions also generate a CP if you kill a character unit, which is pretty good in an army that doesn't have a lot of CP generators. We'll talk about Lord on Juggernaut. This is a really good leader for the Berserkers. So you'll often see him lead a squad of 20 and sometimes leading a squad of 10, right? He's most effective leading a squad of 20, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. It really depends on what you're running in your list. Squads of 20 are interesting to use. They're not always good, so try it out and see how you feel. What he essentially does is that he allows your Berserkers to be able to fight within 3 inches of your opponent. This is especially effective if your opponent is playing very cagey and he's putting all of his units behind walls and they're 1 inch away from the wall, so you can't engage from behind a wall. Well, your Lord on Juggernaut solves that problem, right? You still have to get into engagement. So one model from that unit still has to get within 1 inch of your opponent's unit. But then the rest of the unit, let's say if you're bringing 20 Berserkers, the rest of your unit gets to fight through the wall because they can fight within 3 inches of the wall, right? In some cases, you can actually have 2 rows of Berserkers outside the walls fighting into units inside that are 1 inch away from the wall, He also gives your Berserkers +2 to move, essentially. So they move on 10 now. They move 10 with potentially advance and charge with 1 CP stratagem. I forgot what it's called. I think it's Apoplectic Frenzy, something like that. Essentially allows your Berserkers to advance and charge, right? He also goes through walls, which is nice. Really, really effective leader because it makes your Berserkers really fast. The one thing about it is you can't put them in a Rhino if you have the Lord and Juggernaut leading because he doesn't fit in a Rhino. That's it. And then we have Lord Invocatus, which is similar. He also is able to do a lot of these things, but he is pretty special in that he actually gives his unit Deep Strike. So Lord and Juggernaut and Lord Invocatus can also lead 8-bound and Exalted 8-bound. So that's something you can play with. Lord Invocatus gives his unit Deep Strike, so he can give your Berserkers Deep Strike. So you can play with the fantasy of bringing 20 Berserkers with your Lord Invocatus leading and then giving them Deep Strike, right? That's just an interesting sort of play, but in my opinion, it sounds really good in your head, but when you're actually playing, it's often difficult to put them onto the field, right? Because you might get shot putting 20 Berserkers anywhere, right? That's one thing, and then the other thing also is that 20 Berserkers is very expensive, right? That's a 360 point unit. With Lord Invocatus, it's going to be a 400. I think Lord Invocatus is like 100 now, 460 points. So that's a lot of points, right? You're putting somewhere in Deep Strike. And then they might hit a couple of targets, kill a couple things, but the next turn they're probably going to die, right? Play around with that, see how you feel. He also gives mortal wounds to anything that he charges. And then, he also goes through screens. He's able to go through enemy units with his Berserker squad. So that's pretty interesting. Those are some cool characters. That's almost all of it, except one more, which is the Demon Prince. The Demon Prince with wings is not even worth talking about. It's just absolutely terrible. But the Demon Prince on foot, that's a different story. He gives kind of the army what it's lacking, right? Which is CP discount, right? So you get to give anything within 12 inches a free CP discount, essentially. So if you're using Overwatch, somewhere close to the Demon Prince within 12 inches, you can do that for free once per round, right? Or if you're using -1 damage on your Berserker squad, as long as they're within a Demon Prince 12 inches, they can use it for 1 CP instead of 2, right? So you can do a lot of things like that. He also has Lone Up as long as he is within 3 inches of any World Eater's infantry, which is cool. He also hits fairly hard, not super great. He's 8 attacks, I believe, and then 9 on the charge. Hits on 2, strength 10 on the charge. He's strength 8 without the charge. AP 2, damage 3, right? Damage 3 is really good because if you're fighting Custodes, if you're fighting, Sang Guard, things like that, they're mostly damage 3, wound 3. So damage 3 hits really, really hard. He also gains devastating wounds if he makes a charge. So he's sort of like a mini Angron, but he doesn't quite have the speed. He's not quite as deadly. He's more utility than anything. He's not great for scoring because he's a monster. He doesn't go through walls. He moves 10. So he's a lot slower than Angron. That is for sure. But what he does well, right? Which is as a utility unit, and then if you really need something to kill, a squad of like Custodes or whatever, you can use him to charge and kill them. So he's pretty good. He's really good actually if you're not bringing Angron. If you're bringing Angron, I think he gets a little too expensive to have in the list. So I would say pick one, Angron or Demon Prince. Demon Prince is only 200 points, so you get to pick a lot of the other units to use, right? He also has the ability to carry enhancements, which is interesting because he's really effective using the Helm of Brazen Ire. You get -1 damage, so it makes him a lot tankier. So he has Lone Up, he is T10, he's wound 10 as well, and then he has -1 damage, right? So really, really strong. He still gets killed with the big guns though, so be wary of that. I think that's all the characters that one more. The newest character in the Codex, which is Slaughterbound. Slaughterbound is really, really strong. He's absolutely ridiculous if you attach him to Exalted 8-Bound, because he becomes damage 3 against vehicles and monsters. He's also really strong if you give him the Glaive enhancement. So you can actually use the Glaive enhancement on him, attach him to an Exalted 8-Bound, and you become damage 4 to a vehicle or a monster, right? Or you could just put Glaive on him, attach him to 8-Bound, and he becomes damage 3. Or just put Glaive on him and have him run solo, and he's still a damage 3 monster, right? Because he's strength 10 and he's strength 12 on the charge, right? So he kills a lot of different vehicles, right? He kills a big knight potentially. If it's damaged enough, he could just deal the killing blow, right? He's really, really, really good. He's always in my list. Unfortunately, I didn't have for my current list, I didn't have the points for the enhancement because they just made it a lot more expensive now. It's 35 points for the Glaive enhancement, which is a really strong one. But yeah, I had to just run him without it, but he's so good. He's just so good. He's only 100 points. Be careful though if you run him solo, if you're facing any army with indirect fire, he's just gonna get melted. So if you're facing Astra Militarum, ask your opponent if he has any indirects. If he does, then put him with a squad of Exalted, right? Or 8-Bound, do what you want. Let's move on to some of the vehicles. These are really cool since the Codex. We have 2 Forge Fiends here, which I think for Berserker Warband is almost essential. Forge Fiends are really, really good. They're essentially, you're gonna be bringing the Ectoplasm Cannon. That's essentially a really, really powerful weapon. It's D3 each, so you can bring up to 3. So it's 3 D3, has Blast, has Rapid Fire 1, right? So if you're shooting anything within 18 inches, which is half the range of the Ectoplasm, you get Blast and you get Rapid Fire. On top of that, if you're shooting a unit that is the closest eligible target to you, to your Forge Fiend, you get rerolls to hit, which is really, really, really good, right? And then it's like strength, hitting on 4s, and then strength 10, minus 3 AP and 3 damage. 3 damage in like the current setting of 40k is really, really strong, right? it kills a lot of things, right? And they become, because of the rerolls, they become a sort of a decent Overwatch threat as well. So that's essentially what they are. You want to try to get your rerolls. You always want to position your Forge Fiends such that they can get into a reroll a position, and also to get rapid fire and blast, right? So yeah, they're great shooters. We finally have a very good shooter in our Codex, and so far I've tried it without the Forge Fiends, and I've also tried it with the Forge Fiends, and I'm all for the Forge Fiends being in the list. Forge Fiends are really good. And then you also have, their brother, the Mauler Fiend. I think it's decent. I used to bring them just because we didn't have an option to be like a proper anti-vehicle unit. And Forge Fiends are really good at melting vehicles because I think they're like strength 12 and then strength 14 on the charge, and then AP3 and then like D6 plus 1 damage, right? So they just melt whatever vehicle they bump into, right? They charge 2. You can also tank shock, obviously, but most of the time you don't need to. He's just a really good anti-vehicle, but that essentially makes it the problem with the Mauler Fiend is that it's a vehicle, right? It doesn't go through walls, it moves 10, it doesn't advance in charge, right? So it's very difficult for the Mauler Fiend to be able to get to the target unless you've done a lot of interesting things. Like, for example, they're able to get +1 to charge against something that is below starting strength, right? So what you can do is you can throw a grenade with your berserkers, have your that unit be -1, at least take a wound or something, and now your Mauler Fiend can come in from reserves and charge 8 inches, right? 8 inches is still not a great charge to make. You could, have reroll to charge as your blessing, but 8 inches is very failable. And that's why that makes the Mauler Fiend a little bit less of a, good option, because we have the Slaughter Bound now, and we also have the Exalted 8 Bound that's been buffed. Exalted 8 Bound used to be damage 2, and now they're damage 3 against the vehicles and monsters, which makes them very viable now. Because it used to be damage 2, and it used to suck, because if you hit a vehicle that had access to -1 damage, you are now you're now a damage 1 unit against vehicles, right? So you're not going to kill the vehicle, and then it's going to shoot you back next turn and kill you. So essentially, Exalted 8 Bound used to be useless, absolutely useless. But now they're really, really strong, really good option at 140 points. They're really fast, they move 10 inches, they have deep strike, so they're most likely going to get to the target. And then adding the Slaughter Bound to it just makes it, you're going to kill a big knight. And then the Mauler Fiend is just a little too slow, right? It's a lot tougher because it's T10, but Mauler Fiend right now is just not on my radar. And then of course you have one of the best, in my opinion, data sheets in the Codex, and that is the Hellbrutes. They're not easy to use, but once they pop off, they can do magical things, right? I have 3 Hellbrutes here for a reason. What essentially they have is you're usually running them with the hammer, and then you're also running it with the fist, with the heavy flamer. And what they do, their first ability is that they get +2 attacks if you use 2 melee weapons. So that's why you either use the hammer with, a fist, or maybe a fist with a scourge. You want 2 melee weapons so that they get +2 attacks. And then the second ability is the one that's like really silly. It's called Frenzy. And essentially what it does is if your opponent allocates an attack to the Hellbrute, your Hellbrute immediately hits back. What that essentially means is that if your Hellbrute makes a charge to an opponent's unit, he makes an attack to that unit doesn't die and hits back, right? And if he hits back, you get to hit back one more time, which essentially confirms the kill to just about any vehicle in the game, as long as the Hellbrute survives the attack, right? That makes killing any vehicle that doesn't have good melee weapons it makes this really effective against that, right? For example, if you're charging a Land Raider, the Hellbrute strikes the Land Raider, it probably doesn't die, right? It lives on maybe 8 wounds or something. the Land Raider strikes back. It's not going to kill the Hellbrute. It just doesn't have what it takes. And then the Hellbrute strikes back again and makes the kill. And you think that's probably it, right? Not quite, right? If you turn on Blessings of Corn and you have 6-inch Pile-In and Consolidate, that unit, once it's killed the Land Raider, gets to 6-inch Consolidate into potentially another one of your opponent's units. And if it does that, and if you've done it correctly and your opponent has positioned sort of incorrectly, your Hellbrute now piles into another unit that's not very good at killing Hellbrutes, right? For example, I don't know, a Marine squad, right? So your Hellbrute piles into the Marine squad, it makes some attacks to the Hellbrute, maybe does 2 or 3 damage. Your Hellbrute now attacks the Marine again, and potentially kills it. And if he does kill it, he consolidates again 6 inches to another unit potentially. This often does not happen, by the way. I've only done that in, maybe 20 games. I've done that once. Just because a lot of my opponents know how that works because I explain it to them and they've kind of prepared for it. But just the thought of the possibilities of what he's able to do is enough to scare your opponent to move, position in a certain way so that he doesn't get piled into, doesn't get consolidated to, and he doesn't just wreck the entire army, right? So if you bring 2 of those, that makes it a lot to deal with, right? Usually I start with 1 Hellbrute in reserve, and then 1 in deployment, one deployed, and then from the reserve I try to hit something and pile in, and if he doesn't, he's 120 points. It's not the end of the world. You still have the rest of your army, and you're still gonna win, probably. So yeah, Hellbrute, absolutely insane. Just a really strong unit. Downsides are that he's kind of slow. He does move 9. Yes, I know 9 isn't slow, but 9 as a vehicle is pretty slow, right? You're not quite fast enough to get to every unit that you want to get to, so you kind of have to position perfectly for him to get to your enemy units. So that's Hellbrute. We're going to move on quickly now to some of the other units that are really, really good, like Jackals. I recently saw a person make a video that Jackals are not good. It's crazy. It's crazy. Jackals are great, right? But you don't bring, like 4 or 5 of them, you bring 1. At least you bring 1 to hold your home objective, right? It's 65 points, has sticky objectives as an ability, so it stickies your home, and then it can move out, screen, which is always what they do, by the way, because your opponent surely, he's a good player, will have reserves, so you need to screen. If he somehow doesn't have reserves, then your Jackals are just going to move up the board and take an objective, sticky it, or die on it and sticky it. Jackals are insanely good. There's a reason why you might want to bring 2, is that your Jackals can actually do secondaries and do actions and things like that. There is also the argument that they're not quite fast enough to be able to do actions and things like that, and that's absolutely correct, but you're probably using it wrong because you can actually start your Jackals in a Rhino, which the Rhino is able to disembark 3 inches, which essentially gives them move 10, right? They're move 7, but because of the Rhino, you can actually move 10. You can move 3 inches, you can disembark 3 inches, and then move 7. So they can get to any objective in No Man's Land, most objectives in No Man's Land, and do things like cleanse. And then if your opponent ticks over to your opponent's turn, they have to deal with the Jackals. And because they have sticky objectives, they have to go and step on the objective. And that's just, that's what they do. And they're really, really good. And if you have a World Eaters list and you don't bring Jackals, then you're probably not competitive, right? You're probably not looking to win, you're just looking to have fun, which is okay, which is completely fine, but Jackals are fantastic. Next, they have these guys here that kind of look like Jackals, but they're a little bit more interesting looking. These are called Goremongers, right? They're a squad of 8, and what they do is that they infiltrate. They have the Infiltrator ability, which essentially means they can start anywhere on the board, 9 inches away from enemy units, and the deployment line. So that what essentially means you can deploy anywhere on the field, that is 9 inches away from your opponent's deployment line, or if they have infiltrators already on the field, then you have to be 9 inches away from that, right? Pretty good. I don't think they're as good as we might have thought before we had Codex Chaos Spawn, right? We're going to talk about Spawn in a little bit, but we're going to talk about Goremongers first. So they used to be great because they allow you, your 8-bound, to be able to scout 6, your Chaos Spawn to be able to scout forward because they're blocking the midfield, and if your opponent now can't put their infiltrators in the middle to block you, right? It prevents your opponent from jailing you, which is cool. But essentially, that's not an issue anymore. But they did drop to 75 points now, so they're only 10 points more than a Jackal unit. They're 15 points less than Chaos Spawn, which is very interesting. Are they as good as Spawn? No, they're definitely not as good as Spawn, but at 75 points, they could have their function, right? I think it's a sweet spot, 75 points. I kind of wish it was 70, but it's 75. So they're infiltrators. You don't necessarily want to use them as infiltrators. You might want to deploy somewhere safe, not necessarily blocking your opponent. And they're a lot less deadly than Chaos Spawn. They could be decent, but they're still damage 1, AP 0. They're strength 3 with Lance. So if you're charging a Marine unit, you're actually wounding on 2s, but they do hit on 4s, right? And they don't quite have the volume of attacks to be able to make as meaningful damage as a Chaos Spawn. But what they do fine, right? They can score, they're fast, they move 9. So they're kind of okay. I think bringing 1 Goremongers in my list currently, just to unlock, I used to have 3 Chaos Spawn on my list, but now I have Goremongers because they're cheaper, and I think I've loved them ever since I started using them. They are also 8 bodies, so that's an interesting thing. Not quite as tough as Chaos Spawn, obviously, but yeah, Goremongers, great. I have 1 in my list currently, loving it so far. I've kind of found my sweet spot now with Berserker Warband, and I'm sticking to it. We also have Chaos Spawn over here. Chaos Spawn are, I want to say, top 3 best data sheet in the Codex. They're so good. They're just so good. It's kind of stinky how good they are, right? And every time I introduce my list to my opponent, I always tell them, watch out for these 90 points, little scoring, little killing units, right? Little monsters, because they're just so good. And my opponent, a lot of the time, even after warning, they just underestimate the Chaos Spawn and they kind of fall into that trap. So what they do is they scout 8, they move 10, and they innately advance and charge. No CP, nothing, they just advance and charge. All the time. They're D6 plus 5 attack on the charge each, so it's D6, 2d6 plus 10 for the whole unit. And then hitting on 4s is not great, I know. And then they're strength 7 on the charge, AP minus 1, and damage 2. It's crazy how good they are, right? AP minus 1, you can bump that up to AP 2, damage 2. You can give them sustain and devastating, which just ensures you kill anything. What they do essentially is you don't push them up against elite units. They're just not going to kill anything. But you push them up to kill scoring units that your opponent has that are exposed. He can pretty much hit anything in the front lines. So if your opponent has scoring units, they're probably going to put them somewhere in the front so that they're able to get close enough to the on the objective to score it. So your spawn is probably going to reach it, right? So if your spawn doesn't reach anything meaningful, just keep them back, keep them somewhere safe, be ready to charge your opponent. It's also just 90 points, so if you do lose it, it's not the end of the world. But Chaos Spawn, absolutely insanely good. I have 2 of them in my list now. I would bring 3 if I could in place of the Goremongers, but I don't. The reason why I'm saying that your opponent's screening with infiltrators doesn't matter now is because if they do have screening units that are screening, the middle of the field, if they have 2 units, then it's perfect, because you're just going to push up your spawn, you're going to push up your Goremongers, you're going to push up your extra Jackal unit, one of those things to wipe out those screening units, and then your opponent now has to come in and trade, right? So Chaos Spawn, please bring 2. Please try not to bring 1, right? You need 2 or 3. Really, really good. And then we have the Rhino. Rhinos are just standard transports. They do have an interesting ability that they can reactively disembark the Berserkers. I think that's mostly due to thinking, if your opponent is going to destroy that Rhino, he's going to destroy that Rhino. Disembarking the Berserkers makes them able to Blood Surge, whereas if you left them in the Rhino and the Rhino gets destroyed, the Berserkers come out battle shocked, and they cannot use Blood Surge, and you cannot use stratagems, right? That's probably the only thing they do. You can, of course, Heroic Intervention, but in most cases it's not a good idea, unless your opponent, is kind of not thinking about it. You have the 2 types of 8-bound. You have regular 8-bound that scouts 6. What they do is they get +1 to hit against infantry, and that's an aura, a 6-inch aura that gives anything around them +1 to hit. So if you can imagine them being 6 inches away from a Chaos Spawn unit, your Chaos Spawn unit now hits on 3+, instead of 4s, which is really powerful. They themselves get that +1 to hit as well, so they hit on 3s, they now hit on 2s with their own aura. That's, they kind of kill elite infantry. They're not always effective because they're damage 2. So if you're hitting Deathwing Knights are not going to die, You're going to kill 1 maybe. And then you have Exalted 8-bound. They're anti-vehicle 3+, and anti-monster 3+, and they have Deep Strike. So they're really good to be placed in reserves in Deep Strike, and then you target the vehicle or monster that you want to hit. Rapid Ingress them on the field, kill that unit, and just next turn is just gonna die. And that's fine, because you're looking to just use these units to be like surgical about it, right? You just want to kill the thing that it's supposed to kill, and you're done. And that's how kind of this army plays, right? Let's see, I must have missed something. I don't think I missed anything though. There's still a lot of units that you can bring, like Lord of Skulls. I do have Lord of Skulls. It's just not commonly used, and most people don't have it, so it's not really worth talking that much about. But essentially, this makes the meat of a Berserker Warband World Eaters army, and that's what I wanted to talk about. I'll speak generally right now also about how to play, right? There's a general strategy of how you can play World Eaters and do really well with it. I feel like with new players, they don't quite understand this, so they're having less success in this area. Before I get to this last part, and it's a very important part, please, if you like the video, please subscribe to my channel, like my video, and leave your comments down below what you think of my thoughts on Codex World Eaters. So here we go, right? How do you play World Eaters? Essentially, you're not gonna quite be playing as you did in Index World Eaters, which is a great thing, right? Index World Eaters gave you the false hope of alpha striking and then winning the game, right? It gave you access to advance and charge, so you can hit them in the beginning and finish them off early, and then they don't have anything else to hit back, something like that, and then you win the game. Sometimes it works, most of the time it does not, right? Index World Eaters doesn't actually work that way, but they've kind of hinted at you or kind of lured you into believing this fantasy, right? Codex World Eaters is a lot more mature as an army, I feel like. It's a lot different from Index. You don't have advance and charge anymore. You only have that on your Berserkers. With Codex World Eaters, the current state of things, what you usually do is that you have all the tools you need to score your points. So you want to push your Chaos Spawn forward. If they have to score something big, like anything that gets you 5 or 4 VP, you might consider doing that. And then essentially what they do, if they don't have to score anything, they go up the board and take out your opponent's scoring units, your opponent's cheap units early. And then your opponent next has to deal with the Chaos Spawn, which is pretty tough. If they overcommit, then they've overcommitted, right? They've wasted time killing Chaos Spawn, and now your units are in position to charge them next turn, right? And if they do kill it, and if they sort of underestimated the Chaos Spawn, they don't kill it, one survives, and they can kind of do nasty things, right? to your opponent, even if it's just like holding up a vehicle, right? It's pretty bad having this chaos spawn in your deployment zone. So essentially, you would deploy your jackals for sure. One of them with holding your home objective. That's probably usually one of the first things I deploy is either my goremongers in the center of the field to block out anything, or I just deploy my jackals. Most of the time I just deploy my jackals because I don't care about my opponent having infiltrators blocking my path forward, because I'm just going to send out spawn. I'm just going to send out my second squad of jackals, or I'm going to send out goremongers to kill those screening units, right? But first thing, usually always jackals in the home field, because that's something that your opponent already expected you to place anyway. So you don't want to place your Forge Fiend first and then your opponent places his Lancer somewhere that can shoot the Forge Fiend, something like that. So you want to put your jackals first in your home objective as your first unit to put down. You can also choose to put your goremongers if somehow they serve a function in that spot. So yeah, those are the choices. You can put your goremongers. Never put your goremongers exposed, I don't think, unless you're preventing your opponent from alpha striking. So for example, if you're fighting against Emperor's Children, you may want to protect one of your flanks with the goremongers, so you know those goremongers are going to get destroyed once the EC comes forward, but they're going to waste the turn trying to get to you at least, and that's sometimes worth doing. And then you're going to have chaos spawn somewhere that they are able to scout 8 forward, but also potentially scout 8 backwards into cover, right? So your opponent doesn't get to shoot them for free. So yeah, spawn is just really easy to do. Sometimes it gets difficult to find the real estate in your deployment zone, because there's a lot of deployment zones that have a lot of lines of sight from your opponent, opponent's defensive lines. And what happens is that you are fighting for space between your 8-bound and your chaos spawn and also your Forge Fiend. And sometimes you have to make interesting decisions of where to put them. In rare cases, I do just leave them exposed if I really have to, but almost all the time I don't, right? 99% of the time I don't. But yeah, chaos spawn, absolutely insane. Put them somewhere where they can threaten your opponent's front lines for sure. So they can scout forward, advance and charge, and hit something in the front, but also be able to scout backwards into cover. That's very important. Also works in the same way as spawn is the 8-bound, although they do scout 6 and they have unit of 3 models. So you might want to think about how to get them into cover, how to get them forward. Most of the time your 8-bound is not going to be alpha striking unless your opponent has a really juicy target. You need to be very careful though. It almost never is the case where your 8-bound gets to scout forward and hit something in the front, right? It's almost never a good idea. And then you're likely going to have, if you're bringing Hellbrutes, you're probably bringing 2, you're maybe bringing 3. You're going to have at least one of those in reserves, and then the other one you need to deploy cleverly. Hellbrutes are usually not something that you're going to push forward early unless they can. If they can, then great. If not, they kind of sit somewhere and just brew, right? And just wait for your opponent to make that mistake of coming forward. You push your Hellbrute forward, you bounce around, kill a couple units, and then he dies. That's what the Hellbrute does. And then if you have one in reserve, then your opponent has to think about the sides. He can only come in 6 inches from the edges, so he now has to think about the edges. Oh, am I putting something too close to the edge? Am I putting something where his Hellbrute can hit from reserved, coming in rapid ingress? Just things like that. Hellbrutes are amazing to use, but very difficult to use, I must say, because likely your opponent has thought about him coming in from reserves, and then they've put some things to be able to shoot them. So yeah, and then if you are bringing Angron, then you must prioritize Angron having the biggest threat range. So put him somewhere safe where he can't get shot, but also that he can kind of hit the middle or hit another objective. So your opponent has to think about putting units there that are valuable to him, because your Angron could kill that unit pretty easily, right? Um, Enground, very straightforward, very easy. And then of course you have to think about where to put your Forge Fiends. You want to put your Forge Fiends somewhere where they can't get shot, but that they can come out of hiding and shoot whatever they need to. Oftentimes you're gonna have to pick 2 lanes of fire, 2 firing lanes, and then have your Forge Fiend on each side, right? That's typically what I do. That's how I deploy. Some people like to have the Forge Fiends in reserve and then they come in from the sides and shoot. That's fine. I don't think that's an issue. I'm just not a fan of it, right? Usually, if you put them in reserve, then your opponent has kind of the upper hand of putting the units that matter to him not exposed, and you can't kind of put in your Forge Fiend where you need to, right? But I don't know. I don't have a lot of experience putting them in reserve, but you can try it. Some people have done that and have found success. So I think it also depends on the layout, which layout you're playing. Some layouts are a lot more open, and so the Forge Fiend can come in and shoot valuable targets potentially. But yeah, usually I like to deploy them, 2 firing lanes and just 1 on each side. And then you have your Rhino, which typically carries Karn and Berserkers. Karn and Berserkers are so good, right? They can kill a big knight. I've had a game against a Knights player where they killed 2 big knights, which is insane. It killed 1 first, and then somehow my opponent doesn't kill the Berserkers, and then I charge with Karn and Berserkers again and kill a 2nd big knight, right? You just have to give them lethal hits and sustain hits, and they're just going to do the job, right? Reroll once to hit, reroll once to wound is insane in this army. So Karn and Rhino, you want to position the Rhino somewhere safe, definitely not somewhere they can get shot. Some people seem to think that if they're in the Rhino, they're safe even if they're exposed. They're not safe, right? Rhinos are fairly easy to kill. They have no invuls, they're save on 3+, right? So put the Rhino somewhere safe, and then usually I put the Rhino where they can stage. So turn 1, they just move into cover somewhere where it's close to the middle. So that way you can drop out your Karn and deal with any threats close to the middle or close to anywhere else, because they're just so fast, right? If you put them in a Rhino, they disembark 3, they move 8, that's already 11 inches, plus you can advance and charge with 1 CP. So that makes their threat range very big, and they're also infantry, unlike Angron. Angron moves 14, but he's a lot slower than Berserkers, trust me, because he can't advance and charge, and he's a monster. He doesn't go through walls. Infantry goes through walls, they can just go anywhere, right? So that's how I play that. And then if you're running Lord and Juggernaut or Lord and Invocatus, you can have the option to deep strike. That might be an interesting idea. Lord and Juggernaut, usually I deploy somewhere in cover, but also somewhere close to the front lines so that they can advance and charge, hit something really hard and kill it. And then your opponent kills that unit next turn, but you still have your Karn and your Angron to kind of answer that reply, right? So really, really cool stuff. Typically now I like to bring just 1 Berserker unit just because they're expensive, and there's a lot cheaper units that can do a lot more, like the Hellbrute. So play with it. Some people like 2 Berserker squads, some people like 1. See what you like, try it out. Mo is great too. Mo is great, he's just not quite as great as Karn. He essentially functions as a single unit. He gives nothing to his unit other than reroll to advance, reroll to charge, I think. But if you've played it right, you don't really need to roll those. So yeah, maybe I'll give you guys a little tip here and there as well. If you are rolling charges, you're going to be rolling a lot of charges with World Eaters. You don't want to make any charge that's bigger than 7. That means that your largest distance to charge should be 7.9, because if your distance is 7.9, you just need a 7 to get within 1 inch engagement to your opponent. So 7-inch charge will make the charge. Anything bigger than that, if you're rolling a 9-inch charge or 8-inch charge, just don't do it and wait your turn. You will find an opportunity to be able to do that. But if you are rolling 8s and 9s, you have to roll 8s and 9s, then please have reroll to charge as one of your blessings. Not recommended, because you do need things like sustain, lethal hits. You do need 6-inch pylon if you need to do things like that. So yeah, this is like a brief introduction to the Codex World Leaders. Hope you guys enjoy it. Leave your comments down below. There's a lot that I haven't covered, a lot of things that I haven't covered. If you guys want to, listen to me ramble more, listen to me talk more about World Leaders, please leave your comments down below. We'll talk about it. I've had just so many games. I think I've had about like 60 games now with Codex World Leaders, and I know how to play it now. At least Berserker Warband I know how to play. So let me know down below. And if you think I'm wrong, and if you think my video is horrible, please let me know too. I want to know. I want to know why I'm wrong or something. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one.